All right. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Dead Sprint Radio. I am having visitors. 1 second. I don't know what's going on here. Oh, hey. Hey. Wait, I have somebody else coming in. Oh,
Hi.
hey.
It's an agile idiot. All right, I'll go with it.
Sometimes that's how you feel, right?
Oh, wow. Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, what an honor. I was trying to say I am Haas, and this is Dead Sprint Radio. And now we have Brent and Saajan. Welcome to Dead Sprint Radio. Who the heck are you guys?
Thanks for having us. Yeah, we were just hanging out in this manila room and thought we would join you in your, what are you in, some sort of castle or something in the background here?
Sure, this is the George Peabody Library from Baltimore. All right, Brent, Saajan, welcome to the party, pal. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey. So my name is Saajan. I've been in Agile space for about 14 years now. Started out as a Scrum Master a long time ago, and I've been lucky enough to have been part of transformations in a variety of industries in the private sector: food and beverage, retail, private security, banking, healthcare, insurance. And then for the last 6 years or so, I've been privileged, lucky, so blessed to have been part of leading a transformation within the federal government. And so that has been a really interesting experience. But I'm really just happy to be here to talk to you guys about what Agile is like.
That's awesome. Thank you, Saajan. And I couldn't be happier. Saajan and I have been working together for at least the last 3 years. And I always joke that he's my Sundance Kids to my Butch Cassidy.
There you
All right. And Brent, please tell us who you are.
When I'm not selling you Cuban cigars on the beach by this getup that I've got going on, I'm out there trying to make a difference for our teams. Generally, we are all very passionate about doing it the right way or doing things in a manner that makes sense. And so I like to think that we're process engineers in some way. We try to develop an agile way or a lean way that we can do business and provide something to our customers. And so I've been doing that for about 20 years now. I started out originally in the IT as a QA tester for about 2 weeks. I was a terrible tester. And then somehow or another, they were dumb enough to promote me to a project manager. And then I ended up moving up through the ranks. And at some point in Salt Lake City, Utah, they asked me to implement Agile, since Agile was originated here with the Agile Manifesto in Utah. And so I got the privilege of putting all the little sticky notes on the wall and completely jacking that team up and making them hate me by the end of it. But in the 20 years, I got the opportunity to learn quite a bit. And as you can see, master of fun, we figured out ways to do this and we figured out ways to make it fun. So I'm happy to be here and have this discussion with you guys, and let's have some.
All right. Thank you so much. And you are master of fun. I've worked with Brent for the last 2 years, and I think myself, Brent, Saajan, we became such a tight-knit group. We became really close friends. And to add a little bit of layer of honesty to this and transparency is that I've been wanting to do this podcast for quite some time, but this is way too much fun for me to have by myself. And I asked them to be part of my ongoing adventure. And I'm so grateful that they said yes. And I hope we continue to entertain you, continue to enlighten you, and hopefully you get something or two out of it. And I hope they stay with me for the long haul. So let's just jump right into it. Let's start with today's episode, today's topic. Agile isn't broken. We are. How do you guys feel about this subject?
Clearly, you could take one look at us and realize we're a bunch of broken individuals. Come on. I think that just to start off the conversation, there is a misconception out there whenever the A word comes up, and it's almost become a taboo word sometimes when they say, hey, we're going to do Agile. And everyone has had an execution problem with trying to roll this out, or they're resistant to the change, or there was a lack of leadership buy-in, or something had happened somewhere in their career where they thought, oh God, they're going to do this to us again. But I think that the point of this is that how you approach things, and in that fun topic and how that you go about things, I look at Agile like we're playing a board game and we're setting out the rules for it and we're trying to have some fun doing it. And there's always that one person that monopoly this that hogs up boardwalk and it just completely ruins the game for you and you hate it and you end up tossing the whole board. I look at a bad execution or a bad example, just very similar to that bad player in the field. And so I think that to your topic, that we are the problem. I think you have to come in with the right mindset. And I think you have to come in with the understanding that you can do this and it can be very efficient and very fun. And it can be something that actually provides a lot of flow as we get into that topic. But if you don't do it with the right mindset, you're going to be the guy flipping over the Monopoly board.
I think the challenge there, Brent, is that it's not just about the right mindset. It's the right mindset in the right circumstances as well. Because whenever we do any kind of transformation, we all know how complicated they can be, the number of moving pieces from the team to the team's managers to the team's executive level leaders and organizations directives and an organization's mission and vision. And all of those pieces need to fall into place, right? Because whenever we try and lead a transformation when we don't have a mandate or we don't have an actual community oriented support or a community oriented goal, we're setting ourselves up for more failure and more challenges. And it's our job as coaches to figure out ways to work through that. And I know we've all done that before, but I know we've all also beat our heads against a wall when we're told, like, go transform this team, and this team has zero desire to work with you.
Yeah, I mean, it's that tipping point example, right? If everybody doesn't accept the fact that we are at a tipping point, more play.
That brings up an interesting point for me and a memory, actually, and something that we've talked about often. Saajan, I think you remember when we first started together, I tried to bring this up more than once and it was shut down, but I'm going to circle back to it in a second. But I want to go back to what you said, which was they don't want to work with you. They don't want to work with you because they've seen this before. Because Brent said, oh, here's another person that else have to change. What do you think is the reason people don't want to work with you? They don't want to do agile. They don't want to make that transformation or that jump. I have a couple of ideas, but I want to hear from you guys first.
I'm like Saajan. I came when I was in college, I was doing the service industry and we had this thing called 10-second likability. It was when you would walk up to a table and I remember being this scared 17, 18-year-old kid approaching my first table that I'm going to basically go through the whole rigmarole of the steps that you're going to do. And they had this concept, it was a psychological safety concept of 10-second likability. When you approach the table, you had to come off with the right type of attitude and project that. And I think that some of that resistance, if you don't have that 10-second likability, or if you don't have that establishment of trust pretty quickly with your teams, then you're going to lose them rather quickly. And so I still think that the way that the Agile coach approaches the teams and the way that they buy into that trust and to develop that trust is incredibly valuable. Otherwise, again, I mean, I look at it like we're playing a game together and we're going to establish the rules and the framework around that, Agile framework, if you will. We can co-create that together, and then we need to play it and we need to follow through on working agreements and all of these other things, definition ready, definition done. And once that we've established all of that and we've figured out the rules of the game, let's play the game together. But you have to get them to actually want to hang out with you, right? It would just be like if we weren't friends and we just came together for the first time and I was you're going to go, okay, cancel his subscription. He's now out of this podcast. It's over. We don't want to do this anymore. And as episode 1, I think that we have to have a rapport. We have to establish trust, or we're not going to formulate a really strong performing team.
Right. And that's why we're doing this. So we can let people know, hey, you're not alone. You have been traumatized before by agile and by buzzwords and by bad coaches and by bad leaders and bad processes. And we've been through it. I'll be the first one to admit I've traumatized people with agile before. I've weaponized agile. I've used agile just to tell people to do what I want them to do. And it's not because I was trying to be some sort of a maniacal leader or anything. I wasn't even leading. I was just hired on as a scrum master. And my biggest challenge was convincing people, let's say, why do they have to do stand-up? Right? Why do they have to do stand-up? Why do they have to size using Fibonacci sequence? I didn't know the answer. I just know that you were supposed to.
I think that's part of the biggest issue we see in any large Agile implementation or any new transformation, right? Agile's been around a long time, right? 2001 is 24 years old. It's not a new concept. People have seen it. People have seen it tried, and they've seen it fail. They've seen it fail over and over again. And I think, as much of a broken record as some of us coaches can sound like, it is because we lose sight of what Agile is. Agile is not sprints. Agile is not stand-ups. It is not retros. It is not reviews and demos. It is not planning. What Agile is a mindset that is based on 12 principles and the 4 core values in the Agile Manifesto. So at its core, to me, Agile says we want to understand why we're doing something. We want to make sure that people understand why we're doing something and what we're hoping to get out of it. And then we want to make sure that everyone understands producing something that is of benefit to us as an organization and is of benefit to our customers or our clients is the most important thing we're doing. So for me, if the question is, does an Agile team have to do Scrum? Does an Agile team have to do Kanban? Does an organization have to practice SAFe or less or any of this stuff? The answer is no. Because to me, to be Agile, you're asking the why. The what are we doing? Why are we doing it? What is the benefit we're trying to achieve? And what is our expected outcome, right? If we're asking those questions, we're Agile.
The 2 words that stick out to me at the very core of that, though, is we and people, right? All of those principles and concepts are established so that we and people work together in a cohesive manner in some way. Like, they're established to do that, right? Like that, when you get down to it, we're just people trying to do something great together and flow and follow a vision in one direction, right? I feel like at the very core, it's people.
It is people. I agree. You stole the word right out of my mouth. Agile is about people. Because the people that created the Agile framework, the Agile mindset, I'm going to get chastised and killed for saying that Agile is a framework.
Don't ever read the comments.
Agile is meant for people. It was created by people who were tired of very thing that always sticks to my mind is shipping shitty code. That was one of the founders of Agile said, you can't ship shitty code. It's about the people. It is about the people. And I think once a business owner or leaders or anybody that's implementing Agile understands that it's about people that you work with, people that work for you, people that you service, like your customers. Once you change that mindset on those 3 focus on the people, it's going to have monetary results that are better than they were before. You're going to generate more business. You're going to effectively create a culture of love, respect, transparency. You're going to reduce your turnovers. That's really important.
So I do want to pull you up on something you said, right? I think Agile has grown far beyond shipping code, right? We have Agile implementations in sales, in HR, in legal, in marketing. Agile is not just about software development more, right?
Nope.
And it doesn't need to be, because if you look at the core values of Agile, if you look at what Agile is, there is nothing that is specific to developing code. It is about making sure that you understand what you're working on, why you're working on it, what you're trying to achieve, and then asking you to develop a plan to get there that is based on frequent communication between yourself and your customer. And that idea is just centered on making sure that you are continuing to deliver what your customer is asking for. And that way we're eliminating those 2-year-long project plans. And we're saying like, hey, we just want you to talk to us pretty regularly so that we can, as we work, validate that we're actually working on what you want us to work on.
Yeah.
And that is not unique to software products, right? That can be implemented anywhere.
Have you ever ordered something from Domino's?
Oh, yeah.
Or
All the time.
Do you know when you get that?
Deep dive.
Don't worry.
Plug somebody here.
I hope so. But you know when you get the pizza tracker that shows
Yeah.
your pizza's going and everything like that? What is that? If you had to make it relatable to what we do. What is that?
That's continuous delivery pipeline, man. That's flow.
Agile is not a new concept, right? It's been around, like I said, for 24 years, but the idea of Agile itself and everything that came out of it, like all the frameworks, whether it be Kanban, Scrum, Safe, Less, those have been around for a while. Safe, and a lot of it, and speaking as a Safe coach, unpopular opinion, Safe is just repackaged Lean Six Sigma for all I'm concerned. A lot of these frameworks borrow from each other, and they all use the Agile mindset to sell it. What you really need to sell on is not the framework, it's the cultural change so that people can adopt to it. And the people that the people that want that change for their organizations, they need to adopt it first. And it goes back to leaders.
Well, let's talk about what you said and talk about how Agile isn't broken. We are. And it's largely because we don't put that focus on people anymore. It is very rare to see an organization that is people centric, customer centric, and that is probably the first step in any successful Agile implementation is understanding that your people are your biggest and most important resource, right?
Yep.
They're not numbers on a spreadsheet. They're not cogs in a machine. They are the single most important resource that you have.
Yeah, I think to put a bow on that, like in my mind, Agile isn't the problem, we are, but we can fix it. And I think that you have to follow a few different things. We have to focus on people and communication. Absolutely. That's part of Agile. We have to develop a continuous learning culture that, look, we're going to continue to adapt this. We're going to continue to improve this. And then we have to get leadership to also model that agility. I don't know if you guys ever experienced it, but we get back to people. You ever had leadership that's not good with people and not modeling agility or modeling that example, that servitude leadership, if you will, you can fall apart somewhere along the way. At least I have experienced that without calling out.
I want to go back to something I said earlier about when Saajan and I first started working together and something that kept getting turned down. We used to do this in our group, something where we present Agile topics for a 30-minute presentation to a group of people on a weekly basis. I personally didn't do it on a weekly basis. I did it like once a month or once every couple of months. And I know Saajan did the same thing and everybody else in our group. And we had to talk about topics regarding Agile and transformation and why they should buy into it and why it's easy and how it could be helpful. And we tried to make it as fun as possible, but also very relatable. I don't know if you remember this, Saajan. I talked about the role of a business analyst. And I'm going to ask the question here, the same I asked back then. What is the role of a business analyst in Agile? If you're somebody who was an Agile coach or a Scrum Master from 5, 10 years ago, what's the first thing that comes to your mouth?
Product management, it's product ownership.
Saajan hit it on the nose. There isn't one.
What do you mean there isn't one? Business analysts
No,
can.
I'm answering Hawes's question. That is, what is the thing that you say? I am not saying
That
there
is what used to be said. And working with Saajan, we work together.
We're getting an argument on live YouTube channels here. What are you talking about?
Exactly. That's what we're talking about. You're talking about people who've spent, if not years, their entire careers being the best at being business analysts. And then they hear someone tell them there is no business analyst or no business analysis in Agile, because that's what we were trained to say. That's what the communities back then told us to say, because we had a book that we had to go by, right? And Saajan remembers this. I remember I wanted to do a presentation on what is the role of a business analyst in Agile, and it got rejected so many times. I snuck it in a couple of my presentations, but the topic in itself was taboo and they didn't want to talk about it. In reality, a business analyst is, like you said, Brent, they can be somebody who is product owner, product manager. Maybe they don't want to be, maybe they can be part of the Scrum team where they can help write the stories, test the stories, be part of the solution on how to problem solve, how to fix a story or fix a functionality that's failed. Do not tell me that person and that knowledge and that experience is not used in Agile or Scrum or any other framework. Don't tell me.
So I think that the difference is between a business analyst and a product owner is in the word owner, right? I remember when we had, and we still do, business analysts were almost essentially note takers. They would log the backlog. They would essentially go through and understand and analyze, if you will, the requirements that need to be done. And oftentimes they were gathering that from different places. They also didn't have the correct format in a lot of ways. It was usually just a drop. And then by the time I got to developers, they were completely lost. And then there wasn't really anybody taking ownership of the priority, as well as the way that the backlog was actually written, as well as acceptance of the actual development. There is an over the shoulder partnership between product ownership and development in the software development lifecycle. So for me, a business analyst, oftentimes I don't want to say it, but they wrote stuff into the requirements, but they didn't take ownership. Ownership, the product ownership is a big shift oftentimes when we get into the BA versus PO.
We might be dipping into future episodes here, and I'm going to try to rate a little bit, but in today's world, a product owner, what I'm hearing is a business analyst is not an empowered product owner. How is that different from a lot of organizations out there and a lot of teams out there?
Oh, we see it all. We see it all the time. There's no question about it. Yeah. Look, somebody has to take ownership of the product. Somebody has to be able to say, yes, that's correct. Make it a blue button or background or whatever. Somebody has to accept the product. There has to be a communication and exchange consistently back and forth, and the 3 C's and all of these other things that we can get into. And changing again to the mindset and how we interact with people and owning the product and that exchange and that working agreement that those two have, as well as testing, as well as release management, everyone, right? Across the board has an agreement with product in some way, shape, or form, or interaction, including architecture.
So I do want to add my 2 cents into this. And I think this is absolutely a topic for a future episode, because I think we could talk for full 30 minutes on this topic alone. But this is, to me, a prime example of putting process and structure and calling that agile, because agile has nothing to do with a product owner or a business analyst. What I want to know, and what I think is more important than a title and what the role of that title is, what does the customer need? How often are we validating what we're doing with the customer? Because to me, you can have an analyst who is responsible for generating like what they think the customer's needs are, but then an owner can be the one who goes out there and talks to the customer and says, hey, is this accurate? Is this what you're actually needing? And to me, I don't care what that role is called. I don't care how many people you have doing it. What I care is that function is getting done. And so to me, when I would go into an organization, I'd be like, look, whatever structure you have in place, we can work within this structure or we can blow your structure up. I don't care. What the important part to me is the actual customer validation happening. And if it is, how are you currently doing that? And let's talk about that system and whether or not that system can be improved. Or if you're not doing that, let's design a system that puts that validation in place.
I think Klaus hit it on the head with empowerment. I think they need to be empowered to be able to interact with that. Okay. So agile as we are. I think we went way down this rabbit hole of product specifically. Thanks, Saajan. We talked about people. We talked about agile. We talked about agile isn't the problem. We are. Is it safe to say that agile doesn't necessarily fail the people, but people would fail agile?
100%. People fail agile.
I think it's that people say that they're agile when they're not. And so I think it's important that we remember, like when we say that agile isn't broken or that we're doing agile wrong, what we're saying is that there is this prevalent idea out there that agile is this easy, loosey-goosey thing that people can we're agile. We don't need structure. We don't need process. Like we don't need documentation. We're just flying by the seat of our pants. That's not what agile is. Agile is hard. Like agile, like when we say it's a mindset, when we say it's a set of principles, it's about how you make decisions. It's about how you communicate. Yeah. That is hard. It is changing the way in which you operate to be a more people-centric, customer-focused organization. And Hans said in the beginning, like the tangible financial benefits, I promise you will follow, right? But agile is not easy. So when we say that agile isn't broken, What we're really saying is that most of us just aren't doing it right because it's harder than we think it is or harder than we've been told it is.
I made a comment not too long ago. When you get into a car accident, you don't blame the car. 99% of the time, it's the driver's fault. That's how I view Agile. Frameworks are supposed to work for you, not the other way around.
So the topic I was going to touch on was around the fun thing. And I've actually got one of the props that we've done these things. But in today's world, we're oftentimes virtual. In a virtual setting, we can still make this thing fun. We've done a lot of different things across the board. When we're in person, we've dressed up, we've played games, we do all kinds of different themes can come along with our ceremonies. I even have a prop that's in my desk consistently whenever I want to put a little mask on. And what that does is it grabs the attention and it lowers our guards. People walk into things. Saajan loves to just play with it. It gets everyone's attention and they're like, okay, we're ready to talk. Lowering your guard starts to establish that trust. And I think that is a great tactic for any Agile coach that's out there. Be personable, be honest, be straightforward, be fun, be willing to almost embarrass yourself enough to be vulnerable so that your team learn to trust.
Be authentic, right?
Be authentic. Perfect. Absolutely. Strong recommendation. Thank you for having me here. I appreciate you, Haas. It's a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to doing more of this.
To everyone out there in the audience, please share, comment. Feel free to come into the comments and tell us that we have no idea what we're talking about because we love talking about this and we're not learning if we're not being told we're wrong occasionally. But I will say we're new to this. Bear with us. We're figuring it out, but we're having fun and we hope you join us on this journey.
Thank you so much for letting us talk to you about what we like to talk about. This is Dead Sprint Radio.